Hey friends, it's Tuesday. I've got constitutional law scholar Eric Segall joining me for a great conversation that comes up at 31 minutes into today's show. But I've also got your headlines, a clip show, the clips for you, and thank you to everybody who joined us last night's hangout. It was a hugely attended event. We do them twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays at 8 East. If you are a paid subscriber, you should get the link to relive it, watch it, listen to it. Anyone who missed it, it was really good. We had some very serious conversations. We shared, expressed our concerns. We had some debates and arguments about the political strategies that Democrats are using or not. And as always, we made each other laugh a lot, shared pets, and so much more. So thank you very much to everybody who joined us, and I look forward to seeing you at the Thursday night hangout. And of course, out in Las Vegas at PODJAM. You can get your tickets now. You can also attend virtually if you would like, which helps support the event. And I also will be headed to our longtime listener and friend Desiree's home in Thousand Oaks, California. That's near Los Angeles, apparently. I'll be there on the 22nd of March. If anybody is in Southern California and wants to go, we can send you the details to that. Just ask in the Discord platform or email me and we'll get that to you. Okay, well, lots to get to on the headlines portion, so let's jump right into it. And just take a moment for a breath, a reminder that these are the worst things generally because they are the aberrations, whether it be weather or violence or racism and sexism, concerns about your finances. That's a lot of what we cover here in the headlines, and I want you to just brace yourself psychologically for it and emotionally, and we'll get through it only together. Community is the key. We certainly reminded each other of that last night. But yeah, let's start with the chaos. Okay, first of all, in an attempt to elevate the whites, particularly white men, Trump administration continues to try to erase the history, the accomplishments of indigenous, black, Hispanic, and female veterans from our military history. Also, Heather Cox Richardson writes, an attempt to erase the vision of a nation in which Americans of all backgrounds come together to work and fight for the common good. Axios reported yesterday that at least 10 articles about the Code Talkers, Navajo Indian heroes of World War II, they were also active in World War I, apparently. Well, all of those articles are now just broken URLs, now labeled DEI, which is an abbreviation for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Who are these insidious actors? These garrulous ghouls, white supremacist losers who would do such horrible things, in this case, to the history of Navajo Indian Code Talkers. Axios found that the web pages associated with Department of Defense have also put DEI labels on now missing pages that honored prominent black veterans. Similarly missing is information about women who served in the military, including the women Air Force service pilots of World War II. A profile of an Army major named General Charles Rogers, who received the Medal of Honor for his service in Vietnam, was similarly changed. But the Defense Department replaced the missing page and removed DEI from the URL today after a public outcry. Oh, well, I guess at least they replaced that one. Well, they didn't replace it at all. They just removed the DEI from it. Forgive me. Or don't. 2 days ago, media outlets noted that the Arlington National Cemetery website had deleted content about black, female, and Hispanic veterans. So, yeah, that's pretty outrageous and very, very upsetting. If you're real mad right now, it means you're a good person. So that's the good news. All right, next top story, and this one is important. That's why it's a top story. And it might not affect you directly, but all of these stories are interconnected and affect you in one way or another, right? And as you know, Trump and his sidekick, is one of his daddies, one of his two daddies, Putin's the other one. I'm talking about Elon Musk. They've been asserting, obviously falsely, maybe not obvious to everybody, that Social Security is mired in fraud and corruption. Here's the thing. Social Security is doing great. It's an awesome program. It's very efficient. It works. The reasons why it was created matter a lot, and people should read the history of the time and why it matters so much. But yesterday, independent reporter Judd Legum of Popular Information reported that an internal memo from the Social Security Administration, written by the acting deputy commissioner, called for requiring beneficiaries to actually visit a field office, provide identification if they can't access the internet to complete verification there, which would really suck for people. The acting deputy commissioner estimated that implementing this policy would require the administration receive 75 to 85,000 in-person visitors a week. But the Social Security Administration officers no longer accept walk-ins, and the current wait time for a visit already averages more than a month. So while this change would create a 14% increase in visits, the administration is currently closing Social Security offices. So there's a service disruption that's being predicted, an operational strain, and budget falls that would create increased, quote, challenges for vulnerable populations. That is the Trump administration's own person analyzing what is going on at the Social Security Administration. She also predicted, quote, legal challenges and congressional scrutiny. Well, here it comes. And in a related story in the news over the weekend, an 82-year-old guy named Ned Johnson, he lives in Seattle, Washington, well, he lost his Social Security benefits after he was mistakenly declared dead. Upon that declaration, the government clawed back $5,201 from Johnson's bank account, canceled his Medicare coverage, and warned credit agencies that he was deceased. Do not issue credit. While Musk's Department of Government Efficiency said the heir had zero connection to its work, it's at least an unfortunate coincidence that Elon Musk repeatedly insisted that dead people are collecting benefits. So that sucks. Hopefully it's just an error and we don't need to panic just yet about being able to collect our Social Security. But I did want to mention that reporting from Judd Legum, and obviously they're doing everything they can to demonize Social Security, which has, like I said, been an amazing government program for hundreds of millions of Americans for almost 100 years. All right, now let's get to the rest of the news headlines that I've got for you. These are a little bit briefer as I go through them. Wired yesterday reported that cuts to the United States Department of Agriculture have decimated the teams that inspect plant and food imports, creating risks from invasive pests and leaving food to rot as it waits for inspection. You know, when I keep reading these stories about the cuts to what sound like very vital agencies and vital responsibilities, I somehow just go into immediate denial and go, well, you know, maybe they could afford those cuts. Maybe those roles were redundant, and I'm sure we won't have any kind of like major invasive pet issue or any other foodborne illnesses that are going to be widespread that we'll have to deal with. I'm sure there won't be a real uptick in that. Except for, I know it's not the case. It's just, you read these stories and you wait for the other shoe to drop, which is a phrase that doesn't do nearly enough work when talking about these cuts. The New York Times reported that the cuts to the top secret National Nuclear Security Administration have meant the loss of critical employees, from scientists and engineers through accountants and lawyers at the agency that manages the nation's 3,748 nuclear bombs and warheads. But I'm sure these jobs are probably just redundant and not that important or vital at the nuclear bomb agency. It's fine. We didn't need those people at the nuclear bomb place. I'm sure everything is going to be completely protected and taken care of, and won't be any accidents. And those scientists and engineers were probably working on extraneous projects that didn't matter. They were probably all in DEI trying to find, you know, black and female nuclear engineers and not just white guys, Mormons. Okay. Trump is scheduled to speak with his handler and real father, Vladimir Putin, today. I would love to hear the call. Can we hear a readout? Maybe who's going to be in the room? Oh, nobody? That's going to be interesting. I mean, it's going to be official, more official than their private one-on-one conversations, because obviously people will be on the line, both in the Kremlin and the White House, and probably elsewhere. It'll be their first call since the Russian authoritarian said he would agree to ceasefire only after Ukraine would agree to all of his demands and get him everything he wanted. And a total triumph. So Trump's going to figure out how to give him that or not. We'll see. Yeah, should be great. I'm sure we'll hear a lot about what happened there. Moving on, nearly 8 million Americans work in industries targeted by tariffs that other countries have imposed in response to President Trump's, and the majority are Trump voters, according to a New York Times analysis. The growing trade war and rapid policy shifts are expected to drag down economic growth in the United States and around the world, according to new projections released yesterday by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. That's the OECD that you hear referred to so often. So maybe it's going to be more impactful to red state MAGA taxpayers and voters. Does that even matter? I mean, are there going to be more elections? Does popular or public opinion going to affect things much in this time around? A lot of the conventional wisdom and traditional political science on these issues, I feel like it doesn't apply, and we need to put it through that filter. Does it matter? Will there be midterm, much less general elections? I sure hope so, because there's some great candidates that are running in my district and most likely in yours. NIH officials have advised apparently some scientists now to remove references to mRNA vaccines from their grant applications, and the expectations that the Trump administration intends to abandon most research in the field of mRNA. Wait, what? Legislation aimed to ban or limit RNA vaccines was introduced this year by Republican lawmakers in at least 7 states. In some cases, the measures would hit doctors who give the injections with criminal penalties, fines, and possible revocation of their licenses. I'll be talking with Dr. Aaron Carroll on tomorrow's show. I will certainly ask him about that. But the great Dr. Michael Osterholm, who's director of University of Minnesota's prestigious Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy, said, right now, if we had a bird flu pandemic, we would have a shortage of the vaccine that we need. The one thing that could save us is mRNA vaccine. The challenge would be if mRNA is banned. This is truly a dangerous policy. So going to make sure we stay on that story, and I hope that they don't do that. And it doesn't get a lot of attention. This is good news, but the Department of Energy complied yesterday with a court order and reinstated fired probationary employees, which is like 20,000 apparently. This is a big story, not getting enough attention. It said it's expediting equipment and badge reissues so that they can return to work. So just in case you think litigation does not matter or make an impact, or those organizations that are doing the litigation that many of you have contributed to are doing good work. So keep it up. Keep up those donations and keep up the pressure and support of lawyers who are doing the good work to help the federal government get at least some of these people back to work and stop many of these authoritarian, super evil, villain, billionaire done cuts from going through or staying permanent. And yesterday, Don Bongino, the conspiracy theorist, election denier, horrible man, just a terrible person. Anybody who knows him or listened to him or tangled with him, which I did once on social media, well, he rose through the ranks in right-wing media thanks to his unflinching sycophancy, loyalty to the head authoritarian Trump, his willingness to push all these baseless conspiracies, including about the FBI. Well, now he's the FBI deputy director. And so it's going to be real important that we pay very close attention to what's happening at the FBI. And there's a lot of good reporters and people doing that. So follow and support their work as well. This is a terrible story out of Kentucky. Republican lawmakers there have passed a measure to protect conversion therapy for LGBT plus youths. Conversion therapy, of course, is a scientifically completely discredited practice of using therapy, usually often infused with some kind of weird Christianity religion, to convert LGBTQ people. I mean, it's almost only done by religious people. They want to convert them back to whatever, heterosexuality or whatever the traditional gender expectations are in Kentucky or wherever they're doing this shit. The executive director of the Fairness Campaign, which is a Kentucky-based LGBTQ advocacy group, guy named Chris Hartman, he called it one of the most shameful bills in Kentucky history. He says conversion therapy has been discredited by every major medical organization that's looked into it. That's the governor actually saying that. Andy Beshear, he said it significantly increases the chances of suicide among our LGBTQ youth. It is equivalent of torture, and we should not be allowing it to happen here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Those children are children of God that deserve our protection. So I believe that they have a veto-proof majority there to get around Andy Beshear, the Democratic governor, who does a lot of good work in Kentucky somehow. So let's keep our eyes on Kentucky and any other state house and all of what they are trying to do. This is where a lot of this Christian nationalist movement is got a great grip, and they're passing legislation. So let me know what you're hearing in your state house. Many of you have done real good work. Keep me in the know, and I'm following it closely wherever I can. All right, a few more stories that I wanted to mention. Forecasters declaring extremely critical fire risk in parts of Texas and New Mexico, warning that destructive blazes could spread uncontrollably. The area is bracing for high winds across already parched landscapes. The risk follows after a major cross-country storm that tore through the South and Midwest over the weekend, contributing to at least 40 deaths, reducing some areas to rubble. I'm sure FEMA will be all over it, but take care in those states where it's already beginning early, or it never ends, I suppose. The critical fire risk. Technically it does. It goes back and forth, but it's more frequent now, obviously. Elon Musk's Tesla has been forced to halt sales of its electric Cybertruck pickup truck. Oh no! Amid mounting concerns about metal panels falling off supposedly indestructible vehicles. Have you seen these videos? Have you seen the videos of people somehow projecting hilarious images making fun of Elon Musk and the owner of those Tesla trucks on the back of a Tesla truck at a stoplight? I love those. Okay. Harvard announced yesterday that it plans to offer free tuition for students whose families make $200,000 or less per year. So that's pretty exciting. That's their way to get around the affirmative action policies of the past, seeing as that they've got far fewer diverse applicants and students as a result of that. Supreme Court ruling, which we all knew would happen. They're trying to figure out ways to appeal to a wider swath of Americans, where the median income apparently is like $80,000 for a family. And so your family has to make less than $200,000 to get in. You can get free tuition at Harvard. Good luck, folks. Sad news, the popular craft and fabric store Joann's Fabrics is preparing to close all of its 800 stores across the country. And I hope that doesn't mean anything for those of us who craft or DIY. I mean, I loved going to bookstores and seeing all the books on the shelves, and now most of them are gone. I love going to craft stores and seeing all the ideas on the shelves, and they're mostly gone. I guess I wish I lived in a country or a state or a town, and there are some rules in a lot of towns that only allow certain types of businesses to be established, but even then, people will still buy the products for cheaper on Amazon and elsewhere, right? Always putting them out of business. It sucks because I like those storefronts, and I like stores where, well, you know the feeling. All right. Also, Forever 21 Forever 21's operator in the U.S. filed for bankruptcy. So there goes a fast fashion pioneer trying to compete with online retailers as well. I'm not going to lose any sleep over Forever 21, but there are real people that work in those stores, so it does matter, obviously. And Conan O'Brien was invited back to host the Oscars next year. If there are Oscars, if we're all here, that should be good. And this, in California, a jury awarded $50 million to a man who was burned by Starbucks tea. He burnt his dick, folks. And that's why I got $50 million. Would you burn your genitals for $50 million? My answer? Absolutely. Yep. Michael Garcia underwent skin grafts on his genitals after hot tea spilled on him in a Starbucks drive-thru in 2020. Well, hopefully the verdict is a critical step in holding Starbucks accountable for flagrant disregard for customer safety and failure to accept responsibility. The company did not securely fasten the lids of each hot beverage that were negligently, carelessly, and recklessly served, said his lawyer. The experience left him with third-degree burns to his penis, groin, and inner thighs. He was transported to an emergency room. And since he was hospitalized and treated, he has lived for 5 years with the disfigurement, pain, dysfunction, and psychological harm caused by the burns. Well, listen, again, even after reading the article, I still will take $50 million for a melted penis. As long as it still functions normally, I don't care what it looks like. Wait, does it not work? Maybe I wouldn't take it. Oh, now I'm torn like that guy's burnt penis. All right, sorry I did that to you. A lot of people are going to be upset. You're also going to be upset by this story. And I'm surprised you don't see this more often. Last night at the Knicks game, a celebrity with courtside seats threw up on the court. And it's gross, and you could see it, and it's horrible. And it was comedian Tracy Morgan. So, oh man, Trace, I hope you feel better. Well, those are your headlines from Monday as we head into Tuesday, the 18th of March, 2025. I put a lot of work into them, and I even edit this to make it sound a little bit smoother. So hopefully you appreciate it. I can't do it without your paid subscription. Really, if you don't have a paid subscription to the show, please get one. It's only $5 or as little as $5. Yesterday, somebody signed up for $50. I really appreciate that, Chris. That's amazing. Thank you so much. It means a lot. Every subscription does. I can't do it without you. And the clips are a lot of work too. So let's get to what I call the clip show. Some of my favorite and really least favorite sounds that people's mouths made yesterday. Let's just start with this because yesterday was St. Patrick's Day. I hope you celebrated or did something fun or whatever, hung a shamrock outside of your door. And so the White House did, as always, like when they're celebrating some ethnicity, they invite the worst person from there. They had Conor McGregor, the MMA fighter. They invited him to the White House, and he's a real piece of shit, in case you didn't know. It's really shocking. But he went to the White House yesterday, and he said basically racist shit, policies that he wants the United States to support in Ireland. And his comments were immediately condemned by really everyone in Irish leadership, including the foreign minister. His name is Simon Harris, and here's what he had to say.
Well, look, it's for President Trump to invite whoever he wants to his home, and he's perfectly entitled to do whatever he wishes in relation to who he decides to invite to the White House. But let me be very clear, Conor McGregor is not here in the United States representing Ireland or the people of Ireland. He's here in a personal capacity. He doesn't speak for Ireland. He doesn't speak for the people of Ireland. He has no mandate to do such. And my views on him are very clear, well-established, previously articulated, long-standing, and on the public record.
Yeah, well, he's not holding back at all. I like that. He said it in the U.S. as well. All right, moving on. So you've heard, of course, that on a Sunday night rant and that to reporters, Trump bizarrely suggested that some of the pardons issued by the former president, Joe Biden, including those issued to January 6th committee, were signed with an auto pen and therefore are invalid. Well, Representative Adam Kinzinger, who was on the January 6th committee, dared President Donald Trump to bring charges against him for his role on the committee, which investigated Trump's attempt, of course, to overturn the 2020 election. Here's Kinzinger talking to CNN's Jake Tapper yesterday. He doesn't seem to be too afraid or worried.
So, again, you were pardoned. You didn't ask for a pardon. It was preemptive just in case Trump's Justice Department goes after you and other members of the January 6th committee. What was your reaction when you saw Trump's post last night declaring your preemptive pardon void and vacant?
Well, first off, I'm trying to figure out what he's trying to distract from, because that's what all this is, always a distraction to try to get people's attention, or maybe he hasn't felt like he's gotten enough attention. But look, Jake, it's like, bring it on. Like, honestly, so, we had an election. I fought against Donald Trump. I wanted Kamala Harris to win. January 6th was a big thing, but America made a different choice. Fine. I'm ready to move on. I'm like, look, we made it very clear what happened on January 6th. America made a decision. There is one person that's obsessed about the 6th because he still has been basically deemed guilty in the court of public opinion, and that's Donald Trump, and he can't handle it. He obsesses about it. So my reaction to him is like, you know what? Then bring it. Like, stop talking about it. Stop being all verbose. Stop pretending like you're tough. Bring the charges then if you really want to do it, because we will crush you in court, and it'll make me 3 times more effective against you. Look, honestly, Jake, I'm ready to move on too. But if he wants to keep bringing it up, bring it up, or be how I feel.
All right, there you go. Adam Kinzinger really putting it all out there and tempting the Trump administration. Today, the news story is going to be Adam Kinzinger disappeared. No, I don't think they're that bold. I think he's brave nonetheless. A lot of people, including Eric Segall, saying, they're worried about the things that they say now more than ever before. And I think that's a realistic concern for a lot of people, including Kinzinger. So, I don't like a lot of what he says and does for sure. I think he's been part of why we're here, but I do appreciate that. Okay. Now moving on, I've got for you. I found this clip of Chelsea Handler, a tribute to our Canadian friends, many of which joined us last night. Shout out to Michelle and Carlo and Ben, because this is Chelsea Handler doing a bit back a few years ago, like just after COVID, or it might have even been during COVID, at the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival up in Canada. She was performing there, and I thought it was funny, so I wanted to include it today. We can call this some good stuff, I guess.
For us Americans, Canada is like that nerd in high school that you didn't pay attention to, you know? And then you get older and wiser, and then you run into him years later, and you're like, wow, that's the guy I should have lost my virginity to in the back of a Cutlass Supreme. And America is the football quarterback that you slept with in high school who has since gained 60 pounds, lost all his hair, and gets his COVID advice from Joe Rogan. And Canadian men, shout out to you. You guys are all so much better mannered than your American neighbors. Okay? You will never find yourself in an argument with a Canadian man about wearing a mask during a pandemic. Well, unless you're a truck driver.
All right. There you go. Had to play that before I play this because this is outrageous. Not only because of Tom Homan's terrible answer. He's the head of ICE, this guy who talks like just such a thug that you wouldn't cast him. Be like, that's too thuggish. Anyway, he was asked by this asshole, this anchor on Fox and Friends. He seems worried about the ICE agents, that they're tired, and then really appreciates what Tom Homan is doing for all of us, and most outrageously says at the end, again, I play this not for Tom Homan, but for the anchor or host. Anchor's giving him too much credit. It's just a pundit, really. Says he loves the liberal tears because, just a reminder, cruelty is the point. He loves the suffering and the anger and outrage of people watching all of this play out.
So Tom, what's next? Because I'm getting a little worried about the manpower. These guys they have to be tired. You got 30 guys in the stack going on different busts every single day. You're going to run out of money. It doesn't look like you're getting support from the Democrats on this. You're going against the judges now. What's next?
Another flight. Another flight every day. The teams are going to be out there every day. Every day, the men and women of ICE are going to be in the neighborhoods of this nation arresting criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats, and national security threats. Lawrence, you're not going to stop us. We made a promise to the American people. The President Trump has made a promise to the American people. We're going to make this country safe again. I wake up every morning loving my job because I work for the greatest president in the history of my life, and we're going to make this country safe again. I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
Yeah. I just love seeing you going through these protesters just crunching on the apple as their liberal tears just flood the hallway. Tom Homan, thanks so much for joining the program.
You got it. Thank you.
I mean, that was egregious. I don't even know that guy's name. Lawrence, I think. Is it Lawrence Jones? I'm not even looking it up. That was just so egregious. I love watching you be a fascist thug, and mostly I just love watching the liberal tears. Just that really bothered me, and I needed to mention it. This was the more outrageous Tom Homan clip outside the White House yesterday. Sorry to play for it, but it's important that people hear it, I guess.
We removed terrorists. That should be a celebration. We removed terrorists from this country, and I stand by what the president did. I support 100%.
How do you determine whether somebody is a gang member? What criteria do you use?
To various investigations. A lot of the ways we do it, it's law enforcement sensitive. I'm not going to share all that with you, but whether through social media, through the activities, through their criminal records here and abroad. So this was done a very. The review of this issue was at the highest level I've seen, and I think, again, I stand by everything we did this weekend, and I think the president keeping his promise to the American people. We removed terrorists from the country this weekend. I can't believe any media would question the president's ability to remove terrorists from this country.
All right. Well, that's pretty outrageous and ridiculous and was examined a lot. Talk with Segall about it coming up. But speaking of outrageous things coming out of the administration, also worth playing Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, who said such a shocking, insulting statement about one of our allies. I mean, who told her to say this? Obviously, she got it from somewhere. I think it's fair to say. But here it is.
So is President Trump going to send the Statue of Liberty back to France?
Absolutely not.
And my advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now. So they should be very grateful to our great country. Kelly.
Ooh, wow. Hearing a 27-year-old person say that is hard. I think if you're anyone older or served, that's tough. But yeah, someone in France said the U.S. should send the statue back. I should have probably set that up for context. So she was reacting to Peter Doocy, the Fox News reporter in the room's questions. That's a really important thing. They love to set her up, right? All right, finally, I've got some laughs for you as I try to end the clips and the news segment here on those, and I often go to Jimmy Kimmel over on ABC. We love Jimmy Kimmel Live. Here's a little bit from his monologue.
This was a terrible weekend of deadly storms. 42 Americans were killed in tornadoes and wildfires in several states, and while the devastation was happening, our commander-in-chief meteorologist was back at Mar-a-Lago, again playing golf. As the storms raged, he offered these words of comfort to those who lost their families and their homes. He wrote, "I just won the golf club championship, probably my last, at Trump International Golf Club in Palm Beach County, Florida. Such a great honor. The awards dinner is tonight at the club. I want to thank the wonderful golf staff and all of the many fantastic golfers that participated in the event. Such fun." Such fun indeed. This, of course, comes after Trump chided Joe Biden last year for being on vacation during Hurricane Helene. If you scored hypocrisy like golf, he'd be 30 strokes under par right now. Can you imagine if Biden bragged about winning a golf tournament during a disaster? Sean Hannity would have a rage boner for weeks. But I don't want to, you know what? I don't want to lose focus on the fact that Trump won his own tournament again. Wow, this is the third year in a row he's won his own tournament. Who are the other players in this tournament? I mean, seriously, are there other golfers, or is it just Eric with his Fisher-Price clubs? It's preposterous. Remember how much we laughed when North Korean state media reported that Kim Jong-il had 11 holes in one the first time he ever played golf? We're getting pretty close to that.
All right, there you go. Jimmy Kimmel last night on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Very funny. And now it's time to get to my guests, and I'm so glad that you are here for it, because I had a great conversation with constitutional law scholar, good friend of mine and of the show, and PODJAM guest extraordinaire will be joining us out in Vegas at the end of next week, the 28th. I can't keep my dates right. So very excited to have him there, and always excited when he joins us here. You should get both of his books, Originalism as Faith and Supreme Myths. You should listen to his podcast. You should follow him on Blue Sky and read him at Dorf on Law. He's been published by every major media outlet. He's been on CNN all weekend. He's in high demand still, and all of what he has predicted and said would happen, unfortunately, most of which has the way he said it would, and everything about the court seems to be coming true, which is why we're always happy to have him joining us here. He's a great credible source, a scholar for years, Georgia State University, where he is very highly respected. And let's do it right now with the Legal Eagle, Eric Segall. The Legal Eagle, Eric Segall. Welcome back.
Good morning, my friend.
Great to see you. Excited to see you in just about a week or so time, the 28th in Vegas. And you're going to be there in person. We are going to have the best time possible as we descend into chaos in the United States of America. We're going to find the joy and the fun.
Do you know what's interesting about you holding this wonderful event in Vegas for the second year in a row? Is that right? Second year in a row?
Yeah.
Is that when I came on your show back in 2008, I often wanted to talk about Las Vegas, and you always shut me down as it's the worst, most terrible place, and I hate it.
I still feel that way. However, there happens to be an amazing, generous woman who's a huge supporter of mine and the show and the community, and finds that to be something that's important to her. So she basically invests in getting the community together. Unfortunately, it's in Vegas. Now, no disrespect to Cassie and all of the rest of our friends and listeners, but I can't be an inconsistent principle. I try to be as consistent as I can. So I'm not going to lie. I don't love Vegas, but I do love humans.
So I do love Vegas for 3 days, 3 or 4 days. Right. And we're going to really love Vegas these 3 or 4 days, especially because we haven't talked about this yet. I didn't tell you about it. I intentionally did not disclose it when the person organizing this great event, texted me and we back and forth on details. I added something to our contract. Did you know what I added?
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Yeah, I would. I'm more than happy. I'm happy to come. I'm flattered to be invited. I can't wait for the event. And I added to the contract
a gavel-shaped cane.
When you and I have our podcast, whenever that is, just one-on-one, I assume you and I at some point, we must spend 1/3 of the time talking about the National Basketball Association, about the NBA. That's in the contract, and so I will hold you to that.
Contracts are null and void in this America. Nothing, seen as that the rule of law is gone, my friend. I'm not sure I have to buy. What are you going to do? Take me to court? Which one?
I'm going to take over the podcast or the event, or that's what it's going to be.
I'm looking forward.
We're in the amount of, the seriousness with which legalized betting has changed America is incredibly dramatic and much more fun to talk about than Donald Trump.
Oh, if you want to talk about issues that impact people, regardless of what they are, if you can twist it around that, you always mistake my feelings on sports. Like, I'm happy to talk about the cultural impact of anything about race or gender, or in this case, I'm really interested in how they're paying college athletes now and all of that. Those things are all interesting to me. If you want to talk about how they impact the greater society, that you just got to let it. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. That's what we're going to do.
Okay, great. And we're also going to be online gambling, and this segment is brought to you by...
That's the amazing thing. I'm listening to a sports podcast being sponsored by FanDuel. I'm watching my Atlanta Hawks play sponsored by another betting organization. Everything we're doing in organized sports now is funded by professional bettors. All right, move on.
There are by professional bettors. Yeah, professional sports has always been sponsored by different companies, and obviously.
Yes, but tobacco and beer, sort of used to be, are bad, but didn't affect the outcome of games. Here we have, it doesn't matter. In 2 years, there's going to be a huge mega scandal involving one of the major sports, and this is all going to come to a head.
Why do you say in 2 years?
It's going to happen sometime in the next 2 years.
Right. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, no, that is interesting, and I do want to talk about it, but there are a couple of things I did plan to discuss with you. I just wanted to start in a general sense because I sent you Brian Beutler's piece, which he's one of my favorite political writers.
He's great. He's great.
You like and respect him. Yeah. You're familiar with him. He writes at Off Message. He's been on the show several times. He writes, the way the system is supposed to work is that presidents honor their oaths to faithfully execute the law. There's always some contestation about what laws mean, and it's quite normal for presidents to attempt policy implementations based on the wording of ambiguous statutes, knowing they'll be sued. So I go to you and say, that's right, first of all, and that has happened, and every administration has challenged in different ways laws that they want, right?
Yes, all of that is accurate. I would add one footnote or a caveat or whatever, one more sentence, which is, and Brian wouldn't deny this, and this wasn't his point, but I think it's important. Every president since World War II, without exception, has taken more and more power. And there's no exception to that rule.
Sure.
With each succeeding president, more power has been taken by the executive branch.
So I'm going to send maybe this clip to Brian to get a little bit more insight on it. But let me read the next part that he writes. Yes. If their actions are likely to cause immediate irreparable harm, judges will issue temporary restraining orders. If their policies likely to be overturned, they will be enjoined entirely until litigation is complete. If judges deem the merits unlawful, the policies will be overturned. In each case, the court will issue an order of some kind, and then the president would comply with the order. Is that also fair to say?
Yes, but there is a shade of that. I read that piece, Pete. I don't remember if this is in there. There is a shade of that, which is, yes, presidents obey court orders, and that's what they're supposed to do. But in that obeying, there is enormous discretion. And in the past, as is the case today, presidents will use every vague ambiguity and loophole to get around the order if they can, if it's in their interest. But nothing like what we're seeing in the last week of American life.
Nothing like what we're seeing. And do you want to just mention,
sure,
because it's different? This is what the hair I wanted to split in this conversation with you was, because you're always good at this, is, Pete, let's not act like this hasn't been done before or this isn't the norm. But at the same time, this time it's different because. So when you say not like has happened in the last few weeks, what are you referring to? There's any number of cases that sadly you can choose from, right?
So there are well over 40 cases currently pending with well over 40 orders of different types, temporarily enjoining, permanently enjoining in certain places, enjoining across the country. It's mass chaos, which is what the Trump administration wants. So you and I can't even, I was on CNN talking about this. There's only a limited amount of time we can talk about it because there's 45 cases and it's really hard. This is different in that from the minute Donald Trump walked down the staircase, his gold staircase in 2016 or 15, whenever that was, when he walked down that staircase, he has repeatedly attacked judges in a way that prior presidents have not done, going back to 1937. In 1937, Roosevelt attacked the Supreme Court with language that was very similar to what Donald Trump is using. But it's been since 1937. And this has been a consistent theme of his. Judges are biased, judges are this, judges are that. In the last week, that those kinds of generalized statements, and they've also been imbued with racial
over the years.
Back in the day. But what's happening now, Pete, is through his social media apparatus and through Marco Rubio, which is really amazing. Trump is actively scorning and ridiculing the judges who are deciding his cases today. And that's a new thing. And that suggests to me there's going to be a moment in time when a judge says, I've had enough of this kind of we may obey or we are obeying, but it's hard. You must obey by this date. And if you don't, I'm going to hold you in contempt. And I believe the Trump administration is going to say, too bad. We're not going to do it. Do your best. And there's nothing a court can do in that circumstance. If the president does not want to enforce a court order, the court order will not be enforced. If the president does not want to comply with a court order, it won't be complied with. The founding fathers thought about this, and their solution was impeachment. But we know that impeachment is off the table now these days. So it's a incredible – there's never been a moment in American history where impeachment was so off the table and a president was acting so lawlessly as we have today.
And I think you got ahead of what Brian writes next, which I do want to read, which is, if the president has no intention to honor his oath, that changes things. It's arguably impeachable in its own right to sabotage institutions established under law's preemptive blows against adverse court rulings, because that's what he's doing with all these different CDC and Department of Education and so on. But if a president, Brian writes, ignores court orders, there's no, quote, arguably about it. The remedy is that he is to be impeached and removed. That's the system wobbling, but ultimately working as designed. President goes rogue, he gets impeached. But then Brian goes on to write that nobody is talking about impeachment. No Senate Democrats or House Democrats are proposing impeachment, which would be the solution for a rogue president, in this case, defying the orders of a court, which they don't seem to be prepared for.
Pete, our system, and frankly, there are a lot of failures in our system. You and I have talked about a lot that are built into it. The Senate having equal representation of Wyoming and California, the Electoral College, all kinds of things. But any system that is democratic, that is based on the idea of representation and people will vote in and out the people they want, and there's a reasonable amount of free speech, any system like that cannot operate if the people holding the levers to the system don't believe in the system. And Donald Trump does not believe in this system. He wants to operate the United States government as if it were a corporation. That's what he's doing. And what's amazing about that is every time he's tried to do this in the past, with the exception of reading lines on The Apprentice, he has failed miserably. So in all the companies, he's bankrupt. All the cities he has destroyed, like Atlantic City, all the human lives he has destroyed, like the Central Park Five. He is doing that as president in exactly the same way he did it when he ran business.
Yeah, I don't think that captures it. Only, I would say, doesn't want to run the country as a corporation. I understand why you would say that. Why people, it's a fair way, but he really is running it like a mafia state, where we have seen he's trying to get closer and closer to the way Putin and others, and it will not be the same. It will be our own unique kind of. It is already our own unique kind of mafia state, but that's who he's always been. He's always worked with the mafia to help build his buildings, and has always aspired to be, as mentored by Roy Cohn, his dad, and anybody who he cares about, and as is evidenced by the way that he talks about who he looks up to. So I think that if you want to know who he is, just ask. He'll tell you.
And yesterday, or I'm sorry, over the weekend at some point, by the way, Pete, that was really well said. I can't in any way improve upon what you just said. Over the weekend, he personally, on one of his social media outlets, attacked Norm Eisen of Crew. And I was thinking, and of course that's what Donald Trump does.
Norm Eisen is an attorney and former, ambassador, and he runs this organization, which I've talked to the reps from for a long time, which is Citizens against congressional. It's an ethics. What's it called?
It's called Crew. The acronym is Crew, and it's an ethics organization.
Yeah, it's really good. That's the point. It's an ethics organization, and Trump is, of course, attacking a guy who's running an organization, watchdogs government ethics.
What's more than that, he has joined with a bunch of other people, including a couple people who fled the Washington Post, to start this new thing called the Contrarian. The name is obvious, the Contrarian, and it's a very anti-Trump, and there's some really great people on it. Kim Sheppel, who is like the leading authority on.
It's a Substack, the Contrarian, contrarian.substack.com. I'm looking at it now. Go ahead.
It's a serious place. It's just started, but it's going to be a serious. Anyway, my point about this is we now take it, Americans now take it as normal that the president of the United States will single out an individual who, by the way, these people are all like moderate. These are not people whose politics you and I would necessarily agree with down the line. They're much more conservative than you and I are. But leaving that aside, there are people who have devoted their lives to government service, to public service. And there are many people like this who Trump attacks in the most vicious way. And it's something presidents really have not done in the past. Even Nixon didn't do this publicly. He did it privately from the tapes, but he didn't do it publicly. And the idea, it's a very dangerous thing when it's taken as normal that the president of the United States singles out one isolated person and says that person's a danger and a terror. And what they're doing, Pete, is they're picking off like this Columbia student and this other professor from Brown who are being deported.
A professor and a doctor, 3 people that you just mentioned, right? Go ahead. Yep.
What they're doing is they're not directly violating court orders yet, but they are going right up to the line. So I think they're doing – and by the way, if I were them – with their goals, as pernicious as they are, I would be doing the same thing. They're getting the American people ready for this is an emergency. We have to do this. The court has said we can't, but we're the president and we're going to do it anyway. That's what's happening. And that's likely to happen sometime in the next 1 to 6 months. And it'll probably happen around immigration because they know the American people. If there's any area of law where the American people would want the president to act this way, it would be in immigration.
Yeah, that's Tim Snyder wrote about that today in his piece, and it's not new. It's crazy how it always seems to echo a modern day authoritarian, but most likely the fascists of the 20th century. And it's just uncanny. And I don't think that they're necessarily reading Mein Kampf or the playbook that Hitler or other fascists use. I think it's logical. These conclusions that they come to with how they want to run their tyrant show are logical. And you're giving them the hefty insight from a constitutional law viewpoint. But the truth is, if you're a criminal, this is what you want. No rules, no restraints, no regulations. My friends succeed. I succeed. Oh, and the big bonus for Trump is his whole ideology is his own id, which is revenge. So he's just on a revenge tour. Rosie O'Donnell moved out of the country because he hates her. Like, it's real.
I understand her fear. I do.
Yeah, who couldn't?
Pete, I think your audience might be interested in kind of the perspective that this is not new at all. It's new in America, but it's not new.
Yeah, no, I think we've been talking about that for years with Ruth Ben-Gia and Tim Snyder and others, Hannah Arendt. But go ahead and give me whatever your taste or take it.
What I was going to say, I'm thinking about our forefathers, James Madison and others who really, if you go back to 1788 and think about it, they're trying to create a new country breaking away from tyrannical England. And they are very aware of their limitations. One of the things that people, especially given originalism, that people forget is that, although there's a new book out by Jonathan Guinap of Stanford who makes this point brilliantly, the founding fathers were conflicted about most of the things we're conflicted about. And these were really hard issues. And there were disagreements, right, of course. And they're trying to start a new country. One of James Madison's insights that was so important that we are now facing directly in our face is what the Constitution of the United States and all laws written pursuant to it are, Pete, or what he called parchment barriers. They're really parchment barriers.
Yeah.
On paper, they're really good, and they work when the people believe in them.
Right.
But if the people don't believe in them, they're worthless. And we found this out in 1950s Russia, when the Russian Constitution of the 1950s is maybe the best constitution ever written in the world. It has freedom of this, freedom of that, freedom of speech, freedom of voting, freedom of everything. And there was no freedom in Russia in the 1950s because it was just a paper. It was a piece of paper. It didn't mean anything. Our Constitution is a document sitting in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. The values that it embodies of equality and liberty, even by the flawed people who wrote them, who didn't really believe in those things for all people. The ideals are great, but they're only valuable if people believe in them. I think our country is so diverse geographically, politically, and in every other way. We're 3,000 miles. We have Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have Manhattan. We have Anchorage. We have Hawaii. We have, Birmingham, Alabama. We're so diverse that an autocrat can't govern us the way an autocrat could govern Hungary or Austria or any of those countries that are the size of Texas, which is why you said, and it was a great thing at the very beginning of our conversation, what we're facing is going to be autocracy American style, which is going to look different than autocracy Putin style or Hungary style. But Pete, I am telling you, having done media all weekend, just this weekend, I haven't done media in a long time but I did this weekend. I feel chilled in my speech. I'm afraid to say, for the first time in my life, I'm afraid to say publicly all that I want to say. Professors across the country are being threatened. Universities are getting the funding taken away. Georgetown Law School is being threatened directly, and they're in big trouble with the Trump administration. So I don't like it when other people say we're not going to be hungry or we're too big. We're too big to be an autocracy. I think that's true, but we are less free than we were. And I think this all may be a distraction. So my contribution to your daily podcast is this. I haven't heard this said anyplace else. I'm sure it's been said, but I haven't seen it. Pete, I am really worried that the real action, what's really going on, Trump wants all of these things, of course, or his people do. We're not hearing about the military. The military is out of the news. When's a couple of weeks ago, there was some talk about generals, but there's not been New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal headlines about the military. This is going to end with the military, Pete, almost certainly. And that's where we should be paying most of our attention, and we're not, and I'm really worried about it. And
you think the United States military will be entering states, they'll be militarizing or deputizing the National Guard? What do you see?
No, I don't know. What I see happening is let's take the best case scenario. Trump goes way too far, and the Congress, even the Republicans in Congress, say enough is enough, and they try to impeach him. Of course, that's unlikely to happen. But let's say that only works if he doesn't leave, if the military enforces it. And I'm just concerned about the lack of reporting about what's happening with the military. We hear the OPM, we hear firings here and there in USAID, and the people who are behind, this is not Trump. These are other people. He's not smart enough for any of this. The people behind him are smart enough to know that there will be a line in the sand. At some point, some judge somewhere is going to say, you can't do this, and they're going to do it anyway. And at that moment in time, all that matters is who controls the military. So I'm not saying prediction either way. What I'm saying is, why aren't we hearing about what's happening in the military? I think that's where reporting needs to focus more than on individuals. I just think Pete's going to come to that at the end of the day.
I'm going to look into there. I'm going to say people reporting that, and you and I necessarily seen it, or it's not getting widely read. But I'm going to go try to find that. I did read this morning.
You think I'm crazy, Pete, about that? You think I'm crazy?
I don't. I used to, but I don't. I try to be careful about how I talk, and not in terms of being worried about my speech being. I don't know why I'm not worried. I'm just haven't been, but by the government. But more importantly, I don't want to scare people irrationally. So I try to remain as optimistic and as calm, at least in these moments. Obviously, I'm panicking and losing it all the time in different ways. I get outraged every headline I see, and I'm very sad, obviously. So I go through all of the emotions each and every day, like I think most of us do. But I did read this morning that every blue state governor should be having a meeting and a thoughtful, understanding conversation with the leaders of their National Guard in each state, which has a specific name, the leader of the National Guard, I read. But like governors in blue states should have an understanding with the National Guard so that in any number of scenarios, which it could likely be protests in the street, so chaos. And imagine Ben Shapiro is asking Trump, demanding that he pardon Derek Chauvin, the police officer who killed George Floyd. If he does that, the cities would burn, and rightfully so. That's going So whether it be a protest or some kind of action like that just gets people in the streets, the National Guard, when do they come in? When does Trump get to live out his efforts that he tried in Trump 1 by ordering them to shoot the protesters? Remember? So I think a lot about protests and how National Guards react and how the military is deputizing any number of people. I think about that for sure.
I think what you're saying is so important, and that was really, in my opinion, really well said, in that you and I have an obligation to ruminate and think and discuss these things because of our jobs. It's how we butter our bread and feed our families. I had a friend write me yesterday, just as depressed can be, just saying, I saw you on CNN and it was really depressing, and I don't know, you were good, but it was really depressing. And I have so many friends who are, you described it really well, just depressed and angry and don't know where to put it. And at least you and I can do this and get our emotions out this way. I don't know where the line is, Pete.
By the way, I almost thought you were doing an ad for our bi-weekly hangouts, but that's what happens. At our hangouts, what happens is we reassure each other that we are in reality. This is what's happening. What can we do? And then we have human connections surrounding lots of jokes and humor and fun. And it's real as real can be. But you were about to make another point. But that's what we have to do. Community is the key to getting through all of this.
So what I was going to say was, I do think there's never been a time in my lifetime where personal support, family relationships, and friends were so important. But Pete, what I'm struggling with a little bit, and you must struggle with this every day, I'm sure, is where to draw the line between not wanting to scare and depress people and wanting people to understand what's really at stake here. And I don't know where that line is.
I don't struggle with that, just to be clear with people listening, because it's not some of the scenarios that you're able to conjure in your mind because of your knowledge base and because of what you do are dissimilar to mine. Mine are all based on movies I saw in the 80s. And
hold on, I got to say this. What's fascinating about that is I read a book in middle school. Someone can find it. I don't know the title of it. It was one of my favorite books I ever read, and the entire plot was Russia installing from like birth almost a Russian spy here who eventually becomes president. I have no idea. And
Manchurian Candidate.
No, that's the plot of that, but that's not this. This is someone who actually becomes president and all that stuff. And I remember in middle school thinking, this is like the best book I've ever read. It's really scary and terrifying. And now I actually think that's what happened.
Yeah. And even if it didn't happen, it's worse if it didn't happen, because Trump is doing everything he can to be like Putin and to help Russia, including them attacking us and dividing us to elect him. They are bros.
Yes. Pete, I want to say, so here are facts. I'm just going to say facts for like a minute, just facts. Donald Trump was basically out of business and in bankruptcy in the 1990s. His whole economic fortunes were going to go away until Russians bought up really expensive condos in Florida and in New York.
Yeah.
And that saved him. Okay, that is a fact. It is also a fact that in 2013, Putin brought Trump's Miss Universe pageant to Russia. And it's a fact that Trump went and enjoyed the visit and was showered with perks. Maybe not golden showers, but he was showered with perks. That's a fact. It is also a fact that 7 or 8 United States Republican senators were in Moscow on July 4th, 2016, for reasons nobody has ever explained. It is also a fact that Putin came to power using his KGB skills, and he is, by any account, I think, by any expert on the KGB, the most skilled KGB agent in Russian history. You put all of that together, and it's very clear. I'm not saying Putin.
You're only halfway there, Eric, with the facts. Like there are.
Okay, keep going.
The biggest fact is that his campaign manager was Paul Manafort.
Right. Fair. Right.
And just look into go on LinkedIn and look at Paul Manafort's job right before.
Right. You're right.
And then look
and in 2000, and the only thing taken out of the platform involved Ukraine. The only thing taken out of the Republican platform in 2016 that Trump asked for was about Ukraine.
And my understanding
is all right there, Pete. It reminds me of the West. It doesn't matter. If anyone thinks Trump is not doing Putin's bidding in some way, they're crazy.
My understanding is that whole GRU, Facebook, Cambridge Analytica operation, and I'm just going to say it ignorantly, and because I'm sure there are plenty of listeners who are big nerds and don't forget things, but it's been well reported, very well reported from a wide range of angles and points, was that the Trump campaign gave Russia somehow, probably through cutouts, information gathered from an analytical group as to where people lived in America and through their Facebook accounts. Then they launched all these fake accounts and narratives. This was happening, that was happening, targeting people in certain states and so on, affecting the conversation, dividing us from neighbor to neighbor because of your Facebook account, which is being targeted by Russian bots. And it was an attack on America's social media, on the core of who we think we are. If you really don't want to know who we are, look at our internet history. They didn't go there. They went to our social media accounts. They divided us. And who knows what the actual effect was, but it would be hard to argue that it didn't make people support Donald Trump and not support Hillary Clinton. That would be and so that's my understanding as to the op that was run.
That's an amazingly, in my view, accurate thing. And I told the story once before on your show, but I think I should tell it again. It is April of 2000.
The Trump campaign gave the Russians that information, to be clear.
Let me tell the story. Yeah. It's April of 2000. This is going to confirm everything you just said in a weird way. In April of 2016, Indiana University invites me to give a talk on my view that we shouldn't replace Justice Scalia. 8 is great. Let's go do this for the rest of the time. I get to the airport in Indiana. Bloomington's an hour and a half away, and I go out of the airport, and there's a big limousine there with my name, Segall. And I'm like, this has never happened before. They're not sending a limousine for me. This is nuts. It turned out that President Clinton's ambassador to Russia, President Clinton's ambassador to Russia, was giving a university talk that day. And so we shared a limousine back. It was for him, not for me, obviously, back to the campus. I talked to him for 95 minutes. He was incredibly open, incredibly blunt. At the time, I interpreted his remarks as sour grapes in that he was out of government. Obama was president. He was Clinton's ambassador to Russia. And I just took it as you're out of power now. But anyway, this is what he told me, Pete, over 95 minutes. He said, no one in America today, except some members of the Republican Party, understand who Putin is. They don't understand him. And I took that to mean the Obama administration doesn't understand him, and that's a critique of Obama. What he said was, the man is KGB from head to toe, always has been. He does not wake up in the mornings and says, what can I do to destroy America today? It's not what he does. He has so many problems that America is one of many problems. But he wants America to be in chaos. This is 2016, April 2016. His long-term goal for America is chaos and using KGB techniques to basically make our society much worse.
Yeah.
And he said, one step further, he said he will use human beings for this project, to which I said, do you mean Trump? Now, Trump at this point isn't even the front runner yet. But everyone knew this. And I just read a New Republic thing about Trump that detailed all of the Russian connections. He says to me, I'm not going to comment either way. I'm just telling you this is going to be done as much with human beings as it is with technology.
Yeah, yeah.
He was right about everything.
Now, that's a piece of evidence that's pretty reliable if, in fact, he was referring to Trump, and even if he wasn't. But yeah. I don't know. Seth Abramson wrote that whole book, The Case for Collusion, and I always get irked when they call it whatever Trump calls the hoax and all that. I'm like,
there was collusion.
There was all kinds of collusion, all kinds.
And by the way, Pete, if that story was too boring, just edit it out.
No, it wasn't. I don't. Of course, it wasn't. No, more of that. All right. I don't know what else we have to talk about. I was going to ask you about a couple other things, but we covered a lot of really interesting things, and I think I want to wrap it up there.
It sounds good to me. I am very excited about Las Vegas. I'm very excited about seeing the people in Las Vegas. And I hope my wife, Lynn, wanted to come but could not because of all kinds of commitments. But I am bringing my best friend. And
how will you be with people that have been longtime listeners that are excited to meet you? What do you like in those moments? And it's kind of unique.
Can we discuss this for 2 minutes? Do we have 2 minutes?
Yeah, because I think everybody has a different kind of way of navigating that and dealing with that. Some people are very shy and introverted.
My personality here is very well established. I'm outgoing and an extrovert in situations like this, or when we're on the stage talking, I think I'm reasonably extroverted, or on CNN or whatever. Pete, I hate cocktail parties.
Yeah.
I hate small talk.
Yeah.
It destroys me. So my plan for the weekend is to definitely hang out with all your audience and really get to know them better for as much time as I can. But that's going to be limited by my total my inability to do the cocktail party thing.
But hold on a second. This is a different kind of cocktail party. I am guessing that the people who will that a lot of people will want to talk to you. And I'm guessing at minimum they'll say, I've always enjoyed your appearances. Some of them will say you're a bastard. No, I'm sure everybody would be polite and kind. And then I'm sure many of them will mention something that they learned from you. And that's a different kind of cocktail party where people are, you're the guest of honor and you've been the guest of honor in a number of things. So how do you do when you're the guest of honor and people have a thing to say to you? And I hear you, and people know I don't like small talk either, but I think there'll be a lot of...
Right. It's a fair question. So I do these things all the time, and then there's usually a reception afterwards, a cocktail party afterwards. Yeah. No, I do my job, and I will be as funny and charming as I could possibly be in those things. But it's not. This is different in this sense, and I cannot explain to people how sincere the next couple of sentences are. I never thought for 1 second prior to 2012. And I was already 20 years into my career. I had never thought for 1 second that I would have people like this who care what I say. I never thought for 1 second I'd be on CNN. I never thought for 1 second you and I would have this kind of professional relationship in addition to our very strong personal one. That never, ever, and I'm thankful for it every day. And frankly, I love this much more than I like hobnobbing with con law professors who don't have any understanding of how life works on the ground. So I am really grateful for this opportunity, and I will every ounce of energy I have to make this fun, I will use. Having said that, I'm 66 and I have limited stamina.
Your sincerity is noted and appreciated, and we love you, and I can't wait to be with you there.
If you do want to discuss one thing that's not law related, I have been to Las Vegas every summer since 1983. I have seen every change in that city. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting story. So if we want to talk about that a little tiny bit, maybe we can.
Maybe that's something to talk about in Vegas. While people are there experiencing Vegas, we can bring it up there. And then
I have some good stories here.
And then we can edit it out. Okay.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, bud.
There you go. Eric Segall. Thank you very much. Go thank him. We don't give him enough thanks. And it's going to be fun to have him out there in Vegas, and you can meet him in person and see how short he is. It's going to be great. We'll see if he arrives in a backpack or a front pack or a fanny pack. Either way, he is one of the best. He's one of the biggest men I know, that is for sure. And I hope you go let him know that you appreciate him joining us. And that's all I've got for you. Go buy John Carroll's new album. Everybody will be playing cuts from it right here at the end of the show as soon as I figure out how to make that work with John. He is the best. Go buy his new album, johncarroll.org, and I'll talk to you right here tomorrow with, it looks like, Dr. Aaron Carroll.